Welcome to Female Frequency Podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Jody Nelson, curator, artist, mentor, divine channel, and host of Female Frequency. I am here to bring you unbound forms of ecofeminism, reclaiming art, spirituality, and feminine power to revive the earth. Each week, Female Frequency brings you intimate conversations with trailblazers and amazing stories to ignite change. You'll find inspiring alternatives to the patriarchy, discover creative paths, courage, connection, and magic. Hear from the heroes who activate and restore the divine feminine for our earth. Each episode serves as a catalyst, offering wisdom along with practical steps to empower you to make a positive impact on the planet. Whether you're an artist, empath, or eco-warrior, there's a story here to invite awe and help you embody what I call the female frequency. Hello, everyone. This episode is so juicy, pretty much because it is a total ballbuster. From goddess to harlot, my next guest ballbusts the patriarchal myths that strip women of their sexuality and ultimately their spiritual power. Dr. Joanna Kujawa is an author, scholar, spiritual detective, and a contributor on Heka Season 4 of Magical Egypt. Now, she grew up in communist Poland, was groomed as a Catholic intellect, but switched geographical locations, traversing studies around the world. Her book, titled The Other Goddess, Mary Magdalene and the Goddesses of Eros and Secret Knowledge, is a scintillating scholarship. What I love about it is that the spiritual detective in her unravels ancient esoteric traditions honoring connections between female sexuality and divine power and how they were pushed to the shadows. For Joanna, religious portrayals of women were too idealized. They were desexualized or debased and incomplete, which then spurred 2 decades of research to recover a long lineage of priestesses who invoked the premortal alchemy of Eros. In this episode, learn how bliss consciousness forms a path to cosmic consciousness, our greatest creative prowess. Discover tips to live at your highest octave and operate from your highest self. We go beyond archetypes in this episode, and Dr. Kujawa serves up the best medicine of all. Remember, your path is your path. It's no one else's. You'll hear us share paths of love affairs, choosing not to birth children, most importantly, embracing transformative power and claiming it. Hello, sister. Joanna, thank you so much for being here today on Female Frequency Podcast. I'm so delighted to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to connect with you.
It is so much for me to connect with you too, because I saw your book and I was reading the title, The Other Goddess. I was like, yes, I'm interested. Then it said Mary Magdalene and the Other Goddesses of Eros and Secret Knowledge. I was like, check, and check again. I have to crack this book open and meet this author. So as we get right into it, I just want to commend you for connecting the lineage of women and naming them.
Thank you.
Naming them in names, naming them in their development of what they were doing for the culture at the time, priestesses, and you know, your line here, connecting the lineage of women, priestesses that claim the evolutionary power of female sexuality.
Yes, because, and this is how I started, the book, as a young girl, I was brought up as a Catholic and I went to a church and, beautiful Baroque church, all the European church in my hometown. And I was lucky enough to actually grow up in a tradition that, had a divine feminine, which is Mother Mary, which was called Virgin Mary. But it was so incomplete, and it was so idealized and it was so desexualized that, it was not enough. The story was not real and I didn't have a vocabulary or research behind it then, but it was really a patriarchal way of seeing the feminine, which is completely non-threatening, completely non-sexual, just a mother that is consoling a male that is also, somehow damaged by the system. Right? Because, who sends young men to war? Patriarchy as well, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So they were in the need of this particular feminine. And it's a very beautiful archetype, but it's completely incomplete. And in no way I could identify with this. It was just like, I really don't want to be a Virgin Mary, and there is no way, right?
Right.
So what were the archetypes? So the other archetypes, because I also grew up in communist Poland, where the communist women. So again, everything is good and bad. So in a way that, they were empowering women in a communist state, but also like defeminizing them as well. It means like a woman driving a tractor, so it's kind of maybe, but I didn't see myself this way either, waving red flags and
right. You're so brave for understanding yourself at that young age. Like, that's not your path.
And then, I thought about this other image in the church, which was like on the side in the nave of a church, which was the image of Mary Magdalene, which is also very prominent in Catholicism, not so much in other version of Christianity.
Yes, she was
also Orthodox, Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox, even more so.
Demonized.
And, and she's just kind of on her side, but, she's always portrayed with, what was understood as God or the teacher, and really important in his life and somehow really close to him and somehow extremely erotic. And then I thought, so there's this erotic element there that was, she was understood as being a prostitute. But when I did my scholarly research, I realized that, she was never a prostitute. In fact, she was coined as a prostitute in the 6th century. So it's kind of late when, one pope made a basically scriptural mistake, and they were misogynists. It doesn't, not only the pope's people were just misogynistic, women were completely disempowered by that time.
Yeah. So the church at the 6th century, was very patriarchal, and they were interpreting it anyhow that they wanted, not using the context.
No, yeah, exactly. Actually, there's no scriptural evidence that she was a prostitute. So he called her prostitute because there's an unnamed woman in the scriptures that was called a sinner, and she was also not called a prostitute or adulteress. She was just a sinner. So we don't know what kind of sinner she was. We just have a sexual connotation about it. But when you look at the Greek word, it could be actually, she didn't pay her taxes.
Right.
This is like she just did something wrong,
Yes.
But she's not called Mary Magdalene, and Mary Magdalene is so prominent even in the regular scriptures, canonical scriptures, that there is no way that they wouldn't name her, because they name her. You always name her. So that particular pope made two kind of huge jumps. One is that the sinner was sexual sinner, and the other one that it was Mary Magdalene, and there is no way how. Doesn't matter how you read the Bible, it's just not connecting, So it's just two big leaps, of jumps in consciousness, in awareness that he did. So that was really interesting for me, right? And I started from there. So then I thought, okay, who actually is this woman, and why sexuality is demeaned and continues to be demeaned, not only female sexuality, but sexuality in general in our culture, but especially feminine sexuality, because, even if you look at the big stars, like rock stars, pop stars, and so on, they often portray themselves, like in Katy Perry, I think I'm pronouncing it properly, as, for example, as goddess Nimna, and so on. But then, like, she goes on her force and her blood on her face, and it's just, how dare you? You know what I mean?
Yes.
You're demeaning yourself. First of all, it has nothing to do with goddess Inanna. I'm sorry, I misspelled it. The goddess Inanna, portraying yourself as a goddess Inanna has nothing to do with her, And then, so it's almost, I don't know. I spoke to someone who is in this industry, and he says they are forced to do it. So I think there's actually, I don't want to get too conspiratorial about it, but, there is some agenda to continue to demean not only just generally sexuality as something demeaning, but especially female sexuality.
Well, you just gave me a next goal. Maybe I need to call Katy Perry and have her explain that a little bit further.
Do they make you do this? I don't think she has the freedom to answer this, because I don't know. I was talking to this man and he said, it comes, they let you to be a star, but it comes with certain baggage. You have to
a lot of baggage. Yes.
Way. And it's not just about contracts and who owns your music, but also, how you present yourself.
And the agenda behind it.
Yeah, there is some agenda behind it, which is, quite interesting. But, there are other people who write about it in a very intelligent way. And it's not part of my research. It was just as I was doing interviews on the book, it came up.
This is why I really admire what you're doing, because you're putting the women in the protagonist and in that main character energy. So there's no denying it. It's what they were doing. It's no other agenda except for theirs. And you are discovering it.
Yeah. So nothing happens without them, actually. So that's why I started to look into traditions from, other religions, but also later Christian religion, what's going on there. Right. And it's just by design, I think, actually, before I even got interested in Mary Magdalene in any serious way, I started, because I travel a lot, and I started to be like lots of Westerners, especially, Western intellectuals, got interested in Eastern religions. And when I was in Asia, I was tripping over gurus, other people were partying,
Yes.
And I was like, it was meant to be, I studied Vedanta, which is the traditional, it's like the traditional scripture. And then
Can you pronounce that for us again? Vedanta?
Vedanta.
Okay.
Vedanta, so it's like Bhagavad Gita, which is basically what all normal kind of Hinduism, mainstream Hinduism comes from.
Okay.
And then, but I started to discover, and as I was searching it, both as a spiritual detective, a seeker, and a third one, a scholar. I married all of these things. But, in every religious tradition, there is a marginal tradition, which is much deeper. So there's like religion for the masses, which is often designed to control, but also like to impose morality. They're like maybe even good reasons, so we behave,
Right.
You behave because, otherwise you'll be sleeping with everybody. This is what they think about us. You will be, not behaving. So this is the mainstream religion in every religious tradition. And then there's an esoteric tradition, and they teach completely different things. They're much deeper, and they give much more credit to women. In fact, in many, for example, in a classical Indian tradition of Tantra, which is not only sexual, but is basically a rebellious branch of Hinduism.
Yeah, connection.
Yes, the women are the protagonists. The women actually started the Kula ritual, which is the sexual ritual, which transfers the energy, which is called like divine energy, which is actually goddess energy, which is called Shakti. In Sanskrit, to the men, and to enlighten them. And then again, as you studied historically, as I did as a scholar, it was corrupted again, because then male gurus said that they started to use women to get this energy, but they couldn't get it, you see, because they corrupted the natural order, divine order of things. So I'm really grateful for this kind of interviews, because somebody from Magical Egypt series asked me why, there are so many techniques, tantric techniques for men and none for women.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had to do research and spoke with, a great French researcher also on this topic, who actually wrote fantastic books about it. And there's a very good reason for this, because women possess this divine energy, which is life-giving energy, but also on a cosmic level, not only on a material level. So it means you can have a baby, right? When a man cannot.
Yes.
But on a cosmic level, they possess this divine energy once they're awakened, So yes, you have to do spiritual practice. Otherwise, this energy is all over the place, right?
Right. You need to recognize your spirituality and exercise.
And you have to practice it, and you have to honor yourself. That's why you have to honor yourself, because otherwise you just give it away and then you're called a harlot, right? So the reason why there are only tantric methods for men, it is because a man has to learn how to hold his energy and also his sexual urge to allow woman to come to this through this process that she's ready, also on a physical level, to convey this divine energy, which is called Shakti, which is life-giving energy, upon him. So actually, in classical Tantra, the man is the receiver.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome. But it's not taught like that.
No, it's not.
But it's been just basically corrupted. So I started through the process, historical processes. So I started to look, so it's not only Mary Magdalene, that was portrayed as a harlot, but, it's just earlier than that. And if you want me to come back to Mary Magdalene, I started to look, are there any other sources that portrayed Mary Magdalene in a different way? And of course they are. There are so-called Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah.
So just to give a little bit of a background, you can interrupt me at any time, by the way, if I get carried away.
And for listeners, what Joanna's going to talk about now is she's going to give you more definitions of these words, and it's a great topic. And then I do have a question or two for you. Yeah.
Okay. So Gnostic Gospels are basically also Gospels written in early Christian times, except that they were not included in the canonical Bible, because canonical Bible is the Bible that people read nowadays. So there was a process of selection, natural selection, and some Gospels were considered too radical, and they were not included in this. Mm-hmm. So then eventually they, drifted away. They were forbidden, or, there were actually also fights between different sects of early Christianity, and eventually this particular one that was sanctioned by the Roman Empire, won, so to speak. And one of these Gnostic Gospels is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, right? But there's also another one, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip. Yeah. And in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of Philip, Mary Magdalene is not a prostitute. In fact, she's portrayed as the most advanced disciple of Jesus and his partner, and also his erotic partner. And I know that in New Age circles, so I'm going to upset lots of people here, they like to say, they were married. And I think, why do you have to make her into Mrs. Jesus? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because actually it never says. It says she's his koinonos, which means his partner. Okay? So maybe they're married, maybe not. And then some people say, well, but he was a rabbi, so he had to be married. And I said, well, maybe he was a rabbi, but also there's a good evidence that he came from a very rebellious sect called the Essenes, who didn't follow certain rules. You understand?
I see.
So it's not so straightforward. And I really don't like when people jump to conclusions, like that. So maybe they were married, but maybe they were not married, because actually we already have a mother archetype, which is, Mother Mary.
Mother Mary.
And actually it was Margaret Starbird in her book, woman with with the alabaster jar, I think.
Oh, yeah, Mary Magdalene with her alabaster jar, anointing oils.
Yeah, the anointing oils, that she kind of portrays her as Jesus' wife. But, usually this thought comes usually from Protestant Christianity, because they didn't have Mother Mary. So they looked desperately, give me some feminine. And they basically made her into Mother Mary. And I think, no. We already have a mother archetype. This is a completely different archetype of an independent woman who was a partner to a great teacher, who was his most advanced disciple or equal to him, and who was in a sexual relationship with him.
Yeah, but they couldn't say any of that because they had to weaponize any sort of sexual relations because they wanted to demonize. Yeah, and they couldn't give women any sort of spiritual prowess during that time. No way.
Yeah, so it was not on. So, but because she was so powerful and they could not afford, avoid her even in the canonical Bible, they at least kind of vilified her like she's a harlot. So nobody looks at this.
I see.
But then I looked at earlier goddesses, from Egypt, Sumer, Assyria. I'm not even talking about India at this stage, and they were also sexually empowered goddesses who were choosing partners for what we would call nowadays a tantric practice, in temples, who were also later in Christian times called harlots, but were never actually called harlots. They were just using their sexual power to convey this beautiful energy upon chosen men.
With a wonderful desire. Yeah. Yeah. As we get into your book and you're talking about these things, you ask one question that really is very expansive. And I just kind of wanted to know a little bit more about how did you come to this? How did you come to it so succinctly? So what you ask is, what if you were the best you?
So I'm not sure. I don't remember how I came. But I think it is a very important question, and there are all kinds of spiritual practices that are related to it. So I don't want anybody, women or men, but especially women, to frame ourselves into some outdated archetype, right?
Hallelujah. Thank you.
So when, you are, and these are, esoteric teachings of many traditions, if not all traditions, you are not supposed to be different than you are. You're just supposed to uplift yourself as you are to your best possible version of that. So don't give away your power, don't give in to your ego also, and so on. If you were the best, but you have to imagine yourself in this position. That's why we have this other archetypes, and that's why I call the book The Other Goddess, that give us other options.
I see. I see.
Right. So you can choose. And when I was a little girl, I actually kind of combined 3 archetypes, from Greek mythology. One was Artemis, which is a goddess of adventure, really. She's called goddess of hunt, but is actually, she lives with nature, and she's adventurous. She's very independent. Athena, which is goddess of wisdom, because, I'm committed to wisdom tradition.
Yeah, you're quite the scholar.
So, as an academic, but also as a spiritual detective and a seeker, and also Aphrodite, because, and this is the goddess of Eros. And I thought, why do I have to choose between 3? I have to combine this 3. Why this woman cannot be beautiful and sexy? Why she cannot be independent? Why she has to become Mrs. Jesus? And, so all of these things, right? So this is like, so you take a deep look at yourself, who you are, and the qualities that, also embarrass you, but also that you're proud of. How can you uplift them to another level, right? And but still being yourself, but like an upgrade, upgrade that you actually don't give away power. You actually share your power.
Yeah, it's your highest, you call it your highest octave.
Yeah, on your highest octave, exactly. Yeah, your highest octave. Yeah. So, and this is what you were born to do. You were not here to find yourself. You are not here you are here to express yourself at your highest octaves. You're not a mistake. You're not have to, correct yourself in some ways. Of course, we all have to work on ourselves because, we have also, and this is what Jung says also, we have our shadows and so on. We just have to integrate them and uplift them.
Yeah. Carl Jung is who you're referring to, right? You're the shadow side. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recently just read another article from him. So yeah, let's talk about some of those similarities between that philosophy of masculine and feminine polarities and some of the takeaways that you find are similar, like in maybe Mary Magdalene's gospel or Eros, whatever.
I don't think that they're actual similar because we're talking about 2 different traditions. So, for example, the tradition that is of Kashmir Shaivism, or also another tradition, Shaktism, which are 2 Hindu traditions that talk about bliss. So
talk about bliss.
Natural bliss, yes. That also can come from sexual union. And very often they refer to the fact that, if you don't know what the divine bliss is, then go back to this beautiful moment, of sexual union. If it is done, the way it was supposed to be done without demeaning anyone, right? Again, on the highest octave, right? When you respect each other, it's a relationship that... not necessarily even actually a relationship, but that's an encounter, that creates beautiful bliss. So when you know what bliss is, and this is what actually tantric scriptures talk about. You don't know what the divine bliss is, think how you felt when you made love. This is what Rumi is also saying, right? Like
Rumi,
there's
yeah.
this wonderful poem by Rumi, which was translated by Coleman, what's his name? Canon Barks. When God says to somebody, the God will treat you the way you made love. Like there is a...
That's really neat. Say that again.
Yeah. Like how do you make love? This is how God will treat you. So, but again, we are talking about love from a highest octave. Making love from a highest octave, not just a simple release.
Right. And we're not talking about...
There's nothing wrong with it, but it will not take you to God.
And we're not talking about God in the sense that it's some white dude with a beard and a white jacket.
No. We're talking about this cosmic consciousness and cosmic bliss, the biggest creative power that creates everything, right? Which was anthropomorphized, right? So these are traditions. And my interest in Jung comes from something very different, because when I talk about Jung, I talk about a couple of concepts, which is animus and anima, masculine and feminine. Oh. And Jung was saying that both masculine and feminine are in both women and men, but in different ratio, right?
Yeah, in a different ratio.
In different ratio. He also talks about a shadow. And my concept in the book was that sexuality is being treated as a shadow in our culture. And, for millennia now. And what Jung said, it is you cannot suppress the shadow, like it will come out. That's why there are all of these sexual problems, priests abusing children, there are all kinds of pervert situations. People go to sex shops, which I think is personally a complete waste of time, because if you take it from a highest octave, you don't need, toys, which will bore you eventually.
Yeah.
Right? So basically, we have to integrate something that is perceived as a shadow. Joseph Campbell is saying, what you're afraid of is actually your treasure, it's your gift. And this esoteric traditions in many religions, including Tantra, talk about sexuality as actually being a way to, divine consciousness and divine bliss. So this is what I took out from Jung. Jung is also talking about other things, such as, he was probably the only psychoanalyst that was talking about spirituality in any serious way. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about the journey of a soul and so on. So that's why I'm interested in Jung, because, other psychologists are like not even close. They just would disregard that, right?
Yeah.
They try, but it's not working. Yeah.
I got to tell the listeners, Joanna and I are speaking over Zoom, and so I could see her face. It's, some of it is so funny because there is obviously disgust on people that give such a patriarchal approach to something that doesn't need it. And also the winds are just blowing right now. So the wind goddesses are thanking us for talking about this and airing it out there, right? All of this bliss consciousness and sexual alchemy, it is to me like part of a creative process, because it's a little bit different every day. Like my sexual alchemy is different from day to day. There's never ever one thing that's ever the same, or that feels good too. Is that how you're teaching in your book too? Is like some of the differences?
The sexual alchemy is actually what we were talking about previously. It is, taking it from a highest octave, and basically a connection and a union of the masculine and the feminine. So this is what it is. This is the sexual alchemy, actually. And in my book, I describe, other versions of this, such as like sexual or erotic rapture and so on, because people had beautiful experiences which they couldn't discount and which could not fit into the regular kind of moral predicaments. So, for example, one woman talks about, a very casual encounter that absolutely changed her life, but they couldn't actually be together because they were already partnered. But this is actually what alchemy is. It is supposed to transform you. It is not supposed to create a relationship with someone else. It is supposed to create a relationship with you. upgrade your own relationship with you. So very often it takes, two very advanced people, to actually being able to be in a relationship and practice sexual alchemy, because normal people like us usually think about, like what's now? Like, is he going to call me? Am I calling him? Or is it like, we start to create a relationship with others rather than thinking about relationship with ourselves, But this encounter was supposed to awaken us, and it did awaken us. However, if we do not have a consciousness or awareness, to take it higher, to take it back to ourselves, then we are just looking for it, outside.
Outside.
This kind of line, for example, Tom Cruise's line, "You complete me," it's complete bullshit. Because, nobody will complete you until you're completed.
Hallelujah again. Good.
Nobody will complete you until you feel complete. And that's a sexual alchemy. This is, being at your best self. You are with somebody because you choose to be with someone, not because you desperately need them, because you're nobody without him or without her. That's actually very sad. But unfortunately, 99% of relationships are based on this. That's why, for example, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks about many interesting things. It's actually divided into two parts. It's divided into two parts mostly because lots of several pages are missing, so it is like, in my interpretation and study for like nearly 2 decades of Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I divide it into two parts. And one part is, for example, Peter asks Jesus, tell us about the sin. And Jesus says, there is no sin.
Right.
He just says, so already it is upsetting, traditional people, but that's why it was probably not included in the Bible. But he is not naive, he says, the sin is basically consequence of your own choices. And that's it's a very deep answer, because that means that if your choices come from your lowest self, then choices will be low, so the consequences will be bad. If it comes from your higher self, the results will be good. So the sin is really against you, which means you make choices that harm you. And usually you make choices that harm you because you make them based on fear, based on jealousy, based on being competitive, which is normal. We feel all of these things. But then there will be consequences. It is like you made the wrong choice. Spiritually, you made the wrong choice. Maybe it helped you to advance. You stop somebody at the back, in your work. Maybe it will advance your career, but spiritually, you made the wrong choice. That's a sin, not because you're a sinner, but you make a wrong choice, right? Like you make a big sin because you're jealous about something. That's sin against yourself, because you basically shows your insecurity instead of having a decent conversation about it.
And it's time
what I mean?
Yeah, it's time to reroute yourself.
That's right. Yeah. So there is no sin. Also there it says that, don't look outside for approval. My peace is within you. So basically, again, like whether it is Christ consciousness, whether it's Mary Magdalene, whether it's Goddess consciousness, this exists in you, and you have to find it and you have to practice it. Do not look for approval, which is very difficult. We do all of us do this, from outside, because it will not come. And if it will come for a short time, and you will lose it. Yeah. Because nobody can hold attention on you all the time. It is like a 2-year-old who says, everybody look at me, But it is expected that, that 2-year-old boy or a girl will grow up and, start behaving like that. But we continue behaving like that, right? So don't look for approval from outside. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, the second part of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene talks exactly about what the whole thing is about, which is different level of consciousness. And she discusses 4 levels of consciousness, and depends from which level of consciousness you make a choice regarding anything, it's not just big choices, because it starts with small choices. And this is what I would advise your listeners.
Tell me.
It make small choices, like make something that is not important, because otherwise you'll be completely freaked out. So make, a small choice and take it from a higher level of consciousness, not from the small you, which is the jealous, scared, insecure, fearful you, but from this
Defensive.
other you, the one that you wish you were.
Yeah.
So imagine yourself, and this is actually, I later talk about it, the higher magic, because the higher magic is to imagine what if, which means what if you were, your best self, what choice you would make, and then make this choice even if it kills you. By kills you, I mean emotionally kills you because you're so scared, and it's such a choice that you would have never made in the past, right? Because
Yes.
you have to make this choice if you want to be the best self. And although everything within your being is screaming, don't do this, you do it anyway because you're committed to your spiritual evolution.
Because you're committed. Yes. I've had a few life initiations where, it just was reverberating inside and had to purge, but I knew it was coming from the highest self.
Yes,
my higher frequency.
So it's good if you get this kind of support, which is intuitive support, because we all have it, but it is a very scary thing. And I want to, honor this. So you don't have to make big life choices, big, leaps of faith right away. But, you have to start with imagining yourself as, as at your best self, right? Because otherwise you will always make choices from your lowest possibility. We all have a highest possibility. What is your highest possibility as you? Not as, Mary Magdalene, not as Jesus, not as, some other goddess, but as you. If you're the best you, who you would be. But when I ask people this question in workshops, people very often say, oh, I have a car, I have a house, I have a partner. Women, are obsessed about partners and stuff, and I get it, But, okay. But you may have all of this and still be your lowest self, because you're still insecure and you're still going to lose it. You're going to ruin it, because you don't know how to hold it.
Right.
Because you don't love yourself. You don't come from back. So you have to start from within. What is the best you from within? What kind of person you are? What kind of choices you make? And then, think about external things.
Yeah. Listen to your own heartbeat. So talk about listening to your own heartbeat. What's your creative process when you were writing this book? Was it something that you just saw right out in front of you when you were able to go and bang it out? Or did you take some of those small steps to make it happen?
No, it came from a long spiritual journey, and geographical journey, moving through different countries, different continents, and so on. And actually, at the beginning, I was it was reflections based on this journey. So the writing of a book was actually quite fast, but it was a reflection on the journey, and also claiming my own narrative, because again, claiming my own self. So that's my narrative. This is how I see my life, because of course there have been other things in my life, and I didn't include them and so on, but this is like my journey. So, but I did have a practice. So it means I woke up very early in the morning, like maybe 4:30 and 5, and I would be writing for 1 hour, 2 hours. And then I would take care, go to work, take care of my family and so on. So I think it is important to have a creative practice. I do not really believe, in this kind of romantic vision that, you sit down and in 2 days you write a book. If you do, well, congratulations, and I do know that, it comes with downloads as well, because some things I don't even remember. I did my research, but, it downloaded, but I made myself available. So if you're interested in any creative process, you have to make yourself available. So you have to basically get up, be there, even if you have no idea what you're going to write or paint or whatever, your medium is, and and invoke the creative powers to speak for you. And then, and you have to plunge, you have to trust, and you have to plunge, and it's not like you wake up in the morning, oh, I have no inspiration, I don't get up. You're just being lazy. Yeah. So you're not making yourself available. It's so easy just to say it, no, get up.
Get up. Yeah. Make yourself available.
And make yourself available. That's right.
I like how you said that. Make yourself available. Yeah. Cause I'm like, you got to speak to the energy. If you want to do something creative.
You have to allow energy to flow for you, but you have to first make yourself available, right? Like to this energy. Yeah. And nobody can write or, paint like lying in bed and whinging, right? So this is again being about what if you're the best self, what you get up and you make yourself available, right?
Right on. Yeah. So do you help people become their best self in these workshops that you have?
Yeah, I do. I hope so. I don't know. I also have postgraduate students, although I don't teach this, because unfortunately universities don't offer courses like that, right? So, but I manage to pass through these things.
Maybe we need to do an Eros workshop together.
Yeah, maybe we do. So I have a workshop that is on my publisher's website, which is Goddesses of Eros and Secret Knowledge, which is a longer workshop. And then I have more interactive workshop, which is 3 hours pre-recorded workshop, which, the participants, which is lots of fun because it carries energy, right?
All right.
On a Magical Egypt site. And, I do lots of interviews, and I think the best actually way of connecting with me is actually the book, Via the Goddess. And then, there are these 2 courses, and there are more things coming because I will be included in the Magical Egypt series, which is kind of a probably best show, alternative show on ancient Egypt.
Okay.
When I talk about, goddesses, Egyptian goddesses, and the higher magic for Isis and so on.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
And so that, which is now in production, right? So this one is in production. The courses are already available, and of course, so is the book for nearly 2 years. So and there are lots of interviews, that I've done. So when I was releasing the book. So, all of these things, but basically, if you're looking at some takeaway, honor yourself, and think about, the other goddess, and you are the other goddess, unless you perfectly fit in, like as a mother, as this kind of traditional archetype. That's good. It's a beautiful archetype, but in my opinion, many women don't fit into this. I don't fit in it, and I would die.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, because I meet lots of women, and I don't think they understand how dynamic they are, or how dynamic they could be if they allowed themselves to show up. Yeah,
that's right. Because, they are exposed to limited archetypes, and then, it really bothers me that with successful, interesting women who had many, wonderful relationships. However, they didn't, for example, end in marriage and having 3 kids and a house in suburbs, or women who, had these relationships. Like myself, I chose not to have children. I'm in a very loving relationship with a wonderful man, and, and I chose not to have children for my own reasons. I could have.
Yeah.
And it's my choice, and I claim it. When, you see all of these beautiful women who had such interesting lives, and then they say, they explain themselves, like I kind of got busy with my career and, missed my ovulation time, and now, and they explain themselves like it was some biological obligation. If you did miss it, then it's too bad, right?
Right.
Although there are ways around it, you can adopt and so on. But maybe you chose it. You just don't allow yourself to admit it, that you chose it because you make choices to do other things, like I did. Yes. I chose to travel. I chose to write. I chose to study at, different universities. I chose to have love affairs. And you cannot have it when you, want to have children, because it makes you, unless you're already, quite wealthy, you have to be more materialistic. You have to be more settled, because you have obligations. Mm. And I chose not to have these obligations. And in this book, in The Other Goddess, I claim this archetype because I live it.
Yeah. She gets juicy in the book, you guys. She gets juicy. She tells you about...
Because we talk about my tantric experience and so on.
Yes.
So that's not only research, it's my experiences as well. I actually experienced this, right, as I was studying Tantra. So basically claim it, and I think that people measure themselves, especially women, against these archetypes that are very outdated and very limited, like the mother archetype. And if you're not the mother, if you're not living in suburbs with somebody and, have kids and so on, you think you're a failure when you actually made choices to follow a different archetype. Some of the best relationships do not end in marriage, for example. You don't have to have children or something.
Exactly right.
Some mind-blowing relationships are not meant to be, because marriage is a very, it's a different thing. It's a different form of commitment, and nothing wrong with it, but, it's a different form of commitment that doesn't annul your other experiences. Doesn't mean that, you didn't experience love. Perhaps you experience more love.
Yeah, because it's yours. It's your heartbeat. It's your path.
So, for example, writing of the other goddesses was claiming my path. And this is what I wish to other women, claim your path. Do not think don't compare yourself to your sister who lives in the suburbs, married a dentist. I would shoot myself. Okay. Yeah, and I don't care how much money she has.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay? You're out there in the streets. You're an activist too. You're out there.
But I'm not really an activist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I'm an inner activist. Right? So I'm an inner. I was just an activist as a teenager, when I was in communist Poland, and I was thrown into jail because I participated in the manifestations against, communist government, and I was chased by a tank and thrown to jail, and my mother paid a corrupt police official and who let me out, and so on. But it's really an old story, but some of my friends, Western friends like, because that's my friend who was chased by a tank, right?
Yeah. Chased by a tank, Catholic intellect, turned to goddess energy. I just think you're so neat and so dynamic. And I hope a lot of people are really educated and can see a different path for themselves through your path.
Yeah.
And through that sexual potency.
Yes, and this is, and there are esoteric traditions, but actually this is a woman's power. And I have this hypothesis that this kind of human sexuality that is life-giving, but it's also higher consciousness-giving. Yeah. And this is what Tantra is about. It's not about sexual high. You use sexual high to climb on the spiritual ladder, okay? Then women are givers of it. And that's why I think that it was suppressed, because it's such a huge power that people either didn't understand it or were afraid of this. And that's why women were, constantly suppressed, especially women, intelligent women who claimed their sexuality, were called harlots. And that's why Mary Magdalene is at the center of my book, because she's, as far as I know, the last of this tradition, who as an archetype, right? As an archetype for us to embody, for people who want to embody it, right? And she's the other goddess. So she's like the counterparts to the mother archetype, that I have a sacrificial mother or the mother in the suburbs, and I had a very clear vision of myself that there is no way I'm going to be either one or the other. Okay, like too bad,
Right, yeah. At 16, I said I wasn't having kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is and that's a choice, and claim it. Claim it. You chose to other choices in life. You wouldn't be able to do certain things if you chose otherwise, right?
Right. And it took me a long time to claim that. I mean, I said that, was very demonstrative about that. I said that out loud. I had many women going, "Oh, no, that's not, are you sure?" But eventually, even my body was like, "You're not having kids," because I had a hysterectomy. So then I started claiming, "Oh, well, I had a hysterectomy, I can't have kids." But really, that was not the path I wanted.
Yes. So, and sometimes even if this is not what you wanted originally, I think the biggest spiritual truth and is also, you have to accept what it is as it was meant to be.
Yeah.
If you were meant to have kids, you would meet this person who, you would get pregnant and you would have kids. But if you don't, it means that doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It means that you just have to claim your path as it is.
Yeah. You know what? I always say, no, I didn't have kids. I have artists.
That's right. That's right. So claim your path, whatever it is. Sometimes the path is, we choose the path. And sometimes the path is chosen for us. if some people cannot have children, so if they really want it, they can adopt, they can do all kinds of things. But maybe, I always advise people, maybe, step aside from this and ask yourself, is it just a biological thing? Is it like, when I was asking myself, just because you're good at math doesn't mean that you have to be a mathematician. You understand? I don't know. So this answer is different for different people, but you have to allow yourself to ask yourself this question, like, is it because I really want it, or is it the only path that I'm aware of for a woman?
Right. The only path, because we all know the education systems and the patriarchy is taken over. So yeah, we have to really listen to ourselves to go and seek out these paths that are going to be an alternative to what's being thrown in our face from social norms or social conditioning.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so is it just social conditioning, and because there is a huge pain that comes from lack of acceptance of your own path.
Yep.
So whether you made it as a choice or whether the choice was thrown upon you, the best thing to do spiritually is to accept it and walk it, and claim it for yourself.
Claim it. All right. That might be a nice way to remind everybody today as they listen to this episode, is to claim your path, claim your spirituality, claim your sexuality.
And claim yourself, right? Just say, okay, how can I upgrade myself so I actually am proud who I am, but do not focus on the externals. They will come anyway if you are yourself. Focus on what kind of person I want to be, what kind of woman I want to be. And do not be afraid to cross the boundaries. Like, for example, maybe it means not having children. Maybe it means having 9 children. Cool. Then go for it.
Yeah.
So, but, decide what version of yourself you want to live, and live it. Right? And
let's do it. Let's do it. I'll make sure that your website and your workshop is detailed out too. And in the show notes.
Maybe, yeah? And a book.
Of course.
Because it's still my most beautiful baby, in my opinion. The rest is just...
Yes, your book. And I liked your illustration too. Did you work with an artist to make the cover?
No, that's... I searched for it, and then there's Shiloh Sophia, which is a very well-known artist, especially in alternative circles.
Okay.
I think she lives in California. She's an American artist.
Oh, neat.
And I really liked her work. And then I said if she could give me one image for cover, which a book cover, which she generously agreed to. And she says, but I painted so many paintings, tell me which one. And I chose a few, and I said, this ones I like. And I told her what the book is about, and she made the final pick. She says, for this book about Mary Magdalene, that's the one.
I thought it was, it was perfect.
And it's a beautiful painting, and she's a very talented artist, and she generously basically donated the
Shout out to her. Excellent work.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we will see you soon.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for vibing with the female frequency today. If this episode or any other episode has helped transform or shift your perspective in any way, please tell me all about it. Tell me all about it in a review where you are listening to this podcast. It will totally help me out and help spread the vibe. If you're a creative looking for more support, this is what I do for a profession. I often host workshops, and you can find out all about those on my website. So take a look at www.pressreign.com. That's PRESSREIGN.com. All right, y'all, until next time.